Foundational Black Americans, a historical timeline before 1492. The Americas were home to numerous indigenous civilizations, communities, and cultures long before European colonization. Some foundational Black American proponents argue that Black indigenous populations were already present in North America before European contact. Others point to possible pre-Columbian contact between the Americas and people from other parts of the world. These claims remain debated and should be distinguished from historical events documented in surviving colonial records. What is established is that indigenous nations occupied the continent before European arrival, and that later relationships between Black and indigenous communities became an important part of American history. 1526. A Spanish expedition led by Lucas Vasquez de Ayllón established a short-lived settlement called San Miguel de Gualdape, somewhere along the coastline of present-day South Carolina or Georgia. Enslaved Black people were among those brought to the settlement. During the colony's brief existence, some of those enslaved people participated in an uprising. The settlement ultimately collapsed. Foundational Black American proponents frequently identify this event as an early documented starting point for Black resistance in what would become the United States. Claims that the rebels remained and joined nearby indigenous communities are frequently repeated, but the surviving historical record does not fully establish what happened to them. 1565, Spanish colonists founded St. Augustine in Florida. Black people, both free and enslaved, were part of the settlement's population during the Spanish colonial period. This demonstrates that Black presence in what would become the United States existed before the better-known English colonial milestone of 1619. The history of Black America did not begin exclusively within British colonies. 1619. A ship arrived at Point Comfort in the English colony of Virginia, carrying captive Africans. This date is commonly used in conventional histories as a major starting point for slavery in English North America. Foundational Black American proponents often challenge the idea that 1619 marks the beginning of all Black history in the territory that became the United States. Earlier Spanish settlements, including San Miguel de Gualdape and St. Augustine, demonstrate that the broader history extends further back. 1712. Enslaved Black people in New York participated in an armed rebellion against colonial slavery. Authorities responded with severe punishment and tighter restrictions. The event is remembered as evidence that resistance to slavery was not limited to Southern plantations. It also appears among the historical rebellions highlighted in foundational Black American symbolism. 1738. Spanish authorities established Fort Mose near St. Augustine, Florida. Fort Mose became the first legally sanctioned free Black settlement in what is now the United States. Many residents had escaped slavery in British colonies and obtained protection in Spanish Florida. The community maintained its own militia and played a role in defending the region. Fort Mose demonstrates that early Black American history included organized communities, military service, and collective self-determination. 1739. The Stono Rebellion took place in South Carolina. Enslaved people organized an armed uprising and attempted to move southward towards Spanish Florida, where freedom might be available. Colonial forces suppressed the rebellion, and lawmakers introduced stricter controls afterward. The uprising remains one of the most significant examples of organized resistance to slavery in colonial North America. 1776. The American colonies declared independence from Britain. Black people participated in the Revolutionary War on multiple sides, often pursuing freedom under whichever authority appeared more likely to provide it. Despite revolutionary language about liberty and equality, slavery remained legal in much of the new nation. This contradiction became a defining feature of Black American history. People helped build a country whose stated principles were not equally applied to them. 1800. Gabriel, an enslaved blacksmith in Virginia, organized a planned rebellion against slavery. The uprising was disrupted before it could fully begin, and Gabriel and other participants were executed. The event demonstrated the extent of coordinated resistance among enslaved people and the fear that such organizing produced among slave-holding authorities. 1808. The United States prohibited the importation of enslaved people from abroad. This did not abolish slavery. It also did not stop the domestic buying and selling of enslaved people, and illegal international trafficking continued. The domestic slave trade expanded, separating families and moving large numbers of enslaved Black Americans into cotton-producing regions across the Deep South, including Louisiana and Mississippi. 1811. The German Coast Uprising occurred along the Mississippi River in Louisiana. Enslaved people organized and marched through plantation country in one of the largest slave uprisings in United States history. The rebellion was violently suppressed, and captured participants faced executions and public displays intended to discourage further resistance. For Black families rooted in the Mississippi River Valley, this event is a particularly significant example of organized resistance within the region itself. 1816 through 1842. Black communities and Seminole groups in Florida became involved in conflicts connected to slavery, land, military expansion, and the pursuit of self-government. Some Black people established maroon communities or lived alongside Seminole populations. These relationships varied, but they reflected the complicated connections between Black freedom seekers and indigenous communities. Foundational Black American proponents often cite this period when discussing resistance, autonomy, and Black indigenous historical relationships. 1822. Authorities in Charleston, South Carolina, alleged that Denmark Vesey helped organize a planned uprising against slavery. Vesey and others were executed. Historians continue to debate aspects of the evidence and the scale of the alleged plot. Nevertheless, the case became an enduring reference point in discussions of Black resistance and the violent enforcement of the slave system. 1831. Nat Turner led a rebellion against slavery in Virginia. The uprising resulted in deaths among white residents and was followed by widespread retaliation against Black people. Southern states enacted additional restrictions on Black education, assembly, and movement. Turner's rebellion became one of the most widely remembered acts of armed resistance against American slavery. 1857. In the Dred Scott decision, the United States Supreme Court ruled against an enslaved man who had sought freedom through the courts. The decision declared that Black people whose ancestors were brought to the country and enslaved could not claim citizenship under the court's interpretation of the Constitution. The ruling exposed how deeply slavery and racial exclusion were embedded in American law. 1863. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. The proclamation applied to enslaved people in areas then in rebellion against the United States. It did not immediately free every enslaved person nationwide, and it did not apply equally across all territories. Nevertheless, it transformed the Civil War's political meaning and expanded opportunities for Black military service in the Union cause. 1865. The Civil War ended, and the 13th Amendment was ratified. The amendment abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime following conviction. Formerly enslaved people became known as freedmen. Emancipation created new possibilities for family reunification, education, land ownership, religious organization, and political participation. However, freedom arrived without guaranteed economic security, and new systems of coercion developed after slavery. 1868. The 14th Amendment established birthright citizenship and promised equal protection under the law. For Black Americans, the amendment directly challenged the legal exclusion expressed in the Dred Scott decision. Its principles became central to later civil rights struggles, although government institutions repeatedly failed to enforce those protections consistently. 1870. The 15th Amendment prohibited denying voting rights on the basis of race. During Reconstruction, Black men voted, held public office, and helped shape state and local governments. That same year, the federal census became a major genealogical reference point because formerly enslaved people were recorded more fully after emancipation. For many foundational Black American families, the 1870 census provides an important starting place for documenting ancestral ties to the United States before modern immigration. 1877. Reconstruction effectively ended as federal protection for Black political participation weakened in the South. White supremacist violence, voter suppression, discriminatory laws, and economic exploitation intensified. The withdrawal of federal support helped create conditions for the expansion of segregation and the Jim Crow system. 1896. In Plessy versus Ferguson, the United States Supreme Court upheld racial segregation under the doctrine of separate but equal. The case arose from Louisiana and helped legitimize discriminatory public systems across the country. In practice, facilities and services designated for Black Americans were consistently unequal. The ruling strengthened the legal structure of segregation for generations. 1900. The federal census included information useful for tracing race, birthplace, and parental birthplace. Foundational Black American proponents sometimes used these records alongside earlier census documents, Freedmen's Bureau records, land records, church records, and family histories to establish long-standing Black American lineage. Genealogy became an important tool for connecting living families to specific communities and historical periods. 1910 through 1970. The Great Migration reshaped the United States as approximately 6 million Black Americans moved from the South to cities and communities in the North, Midwest, and West. Families sought employment, greater safety, educational opportunities, and relief from Southern racial violence. They carried regional traditions, religious practices, music, food, language, and political organizing into new parts of the country. The movement transformed American culture and urban life. 1921, a white mob attacked the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, a prosperous Black community often called Black Wall Street. Homes, businesses, and institutions were destroyed, and residents were killed or displaced. The Tulsa Massacre became a powerful example of how Black economic development could be targeted through organized racial violence. 1954. In Brown versus Board of Education, the United States Supreme Court ruled that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. The decision overturned the legal foundation of school segregation, established under earlier interpretations of separate but equal. However, many communities resisted integration, and equal educational access remained an ongoing struggle. 1964. The Civil Rights Act prohibited major forms of racial discrimination in public accommodations and employment. The legislation resulted from generations of organizing, protest, legal challenges, and direct action. Its passage represented a major legal victory, although it did not eliminate discrimination or repair the economic consequences of earlier exclusion. 1965. The Voting Rights Act established stronger federal protections against racial discrimination in voting. Black organizers had long challenged literacy tests, intimidation, and other barriers designed to suppress participation. The law expanded access to the ballot and reshaped political representation. The same year, changes to federal immigration law also contributed to shifts in immigration patterns over subsequent decades. A distinction that some foundational Black American proponents reference when discussing lineage and community identity. The modern era. Foundational Black American is a contemporary designation used for Black Americans who trace their ancestry to people enslaved in the United States or to long-standing free Black communities present during the country's formative history. Proponents emphasize lineage, cultural continuity, political identity, historical resistance, and the contributions of Black Americans to the nation's development. The timeline is not simply a record of enslavement. It is also a record of settlement, rebellion, community building, military service, migration, cultural creation, and the continuing struggle for recognition and justice.